Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Taco Fan Podcast. I'm Kylie Montigney, and today we're welcoming Leia Hunt. She's a two-time childhood cancer survivor. Leah's journey began when she was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, a rare and aggressive form of eye cancer at just 2 years old. Her fight against the disease involved 26 surgical procedures, numerous rounds of chemotherapy, and the insertion of a radioactive isotope in her left eye, which I'm like, oh my God, that's insane. But although the radiation successfully irradiated the cancer, it also left Leah blind in that eye. Despite those challenges, Leah's experiences fueled her passion to make a difference at the age of 18 while still a senior in high school when she founded Leah's Kids, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting families facing childhood cancer. Through Leah's Kids, Leah has been able to provide financial assistance, advocacy, warrior parties, mental health retreats for children, teens, and young adults across the nation. Thank you so much, Leah, for coming on, taking the time to chat with us today. Your story is amazing. I'm so glad to have you on today.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. I'm so honored. I'm excited. You are so sweet, and I think this is going to be awesome.
Thank you so much. You definitely will. And first of all, you were diagnosed with eye cancer at just 2 years old, which is, I'm like, that is so young to get diagnosed with cancer, in my opinion. How has that early experience shaped your identity and outlook on life?
Well, I think when you're diagnosed with something at such a young age, you really are carrying that cross of that diagnosis for the rest
Mhm.
of your life. I always say that cancer, there's no period in cancer, there's always a comma. And at a young age, I knew more about medical terminology than Disney princesses.
Yeah.
So my whole life was automatically turned upside down, as anyone's would be. But then the next stage of my life was affected by cancer, and the next stage of my life was affected by cancer. So I think it definitely put me on a different path. It definitely put me a little bit different than my peers at such a young age. But I will say that right off the bat, I can tell you I'm so grateful for my cancer because my cancer gave me my purpose. It gave me Leah's
Mhm.
Kids. It gave me a mission. And although I have seen the world through different eyes since a young age, I can say that, I'm grateful where I am today, but it definitely is a hard, hard journey.
No, definitely. Were you when the second time you got diagnosed, was it the same form of cancer as before, or was it a different sort of cancer?
Yes. So I was diagnosed for the first time about 2.5 years old with retinoblastoma in my left eye. We did treatment for about a year. I went off of treatment for 6 months, and then within those 6 months, I quickly relapsed again in the left eye. And, cancer still wanted to be my friend. So we kind of stepped up our game, did some more chemo, did radiations, more surgeries, and then they put the radioactive isotope on my left eye. I was in isolation for about 7 days. They took the radioactive isotope off of the eye, so they sewed it into my eye, and then they removed it, and it did two things. The cancer cells began to die, but then also the vision. I started to lose vision in my left eye, and after a few days, I kind of woke up and I told my mom I couldn't see anymore out of one eye.
That's crazy. Not to see one eye, I'll be like, I'm not doing this anymore. How do you handle that though? At least for me, it's like if I'd lost one eyesight, I'd be like, I don't know what I'm gonna do anymore.
Yeah, when you're in that situation, you don't really have a choice to anything else besides getting through it. And
Mhm.
I think a quote that I've always loved is full strength ahead.
Yeah.
And it's always put things in perspective for me that, we're going to keep going forward because I have no choice but to go forward. And I'm going to fully dive into who Leah is. And at a very young age, Leah became Leah that had cancer and Leah that was blind in one eye. And so it definitely has the challenges. And as I grew up, it got a lot harder for me. I will say simple things like shaking someone's hand. That is such a simple task. But for a person with univision, your depth perception is completely off. And
Mhm.
so shaking a hand for me was really hard as a young kid, where for a time in my life, didn't want to shake anyone's hand because I would always miss their hand when I would go out. Or, things like I played basketball. I was a huge athlete. I love
Mhm.
basketball. But it came to a time in my life where the sport that I loved, my eyesight was starting to hinder me. So you're shooting at a line to get a ball into a small hole,
Mhm.
but my depth perception was always off. So I'm always hoping the ball would go in. And then, just other players and other girls knowing how to get around me because, it was very known in my small town that I grew up in that I, lacked vision in one eye. And so I think it's taking a lot of the normal mundane experiences and finding your own normal inside of that. And that was definitely hard, but I really had no other option. And I think when you have
Mhm.
no other option, it's full strength ahead. It's figuring out where you're going to go from there.
Exactly. Like if it's like you're playing basketball and it's hard to see your vision, I would be like having a mental breakdown. It's because obviously it's so hard to deal with like the loss of like one eyesight or both or whatever it may be due to cancer. I mean,
Right.
sometimes that can often happen to lose eyesight from cancer.
Yes. Yes,
And
exactly.
for me, it's like to lose a lot of the ability to do something like shake people's hands when you're meeting them or something, and also playing a sport that you love. It would drain me because obviously I would love, obviously, I'm so happy I could play and everything, but it's like you are technically not the same ever since you lost one, I'd say. It's like much harder compared to like most people.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
How would like you describe like your childhood growing up with one blind eye and one CI, having to live with that like every single day?
I think since I was so young, I didn't know anything else. I kind of just knew being blind in one eye was who I was. It was part of my story, it was part of my journey. But I will say as I aged, I think my all my side effects from chemo and from treatment really came out to play as I
Hmm.
got older. And I will say it was hard when I was at different milestones than peers, but
Mm.
really seeing that my peers lived a very different life than I did. They didn't know cancer and MRIs and chemotherapy and radiation and what that meant. Whereas to me, that was in my daily vocabulary.
Yeah.
They, I remember we did a project at school in English class, and we didn't make a timeline of our life. And on
Hmm.
my timeline, I put, end of chemo party, round two of radiation, hospitalization, make a wish trip, rang the bell, all those milestones that come with cancer.
Yeah.
Whereas my friend's timeline was went to Disney World, first birthday, third birthday, confirmation, like your normal things that kids are going to experience.
Hmm.
And that I remember my teacher hung them in the hallway and I looked at them and I was like, oh, mine looks really different compared to theirs. And I think that probably was the hardest part, just knowing I was a little bit different than my peers, but also knowing that they were so young that they weren't going to understand.
Yeah, like especially if it was like at a young age, like when you're really young, a lot of people don't realize like this is cancer, this is what a person
Right.
goes through until like they are older and kind of understand that part and everything. And like to go through that, I'll be like heartbroken to realize like this is my life. My life is not, I don't want to say not normal, but it's just like different from
It
most
changes.
kids my age and everything.
Right.
Like I'll feel like so alone. It's because not a lot of people see life with cancer the same lens
Yeah,
as
well, I'll
I
say
do.
isolation. Yeah, isolation is a huge thing in the pediatric cancer world, really for any stage of cancer, really any diagnosis, because you're hospitalized, you're not in school, you're not with peers, your life looks
Mhm.
very different than before. And so that's why with Leah's kids, we've spearheaded the sisterhood program of, girls coming together and boys, but girls coming together and having a friend so they can hear the Me Too movement. They can
Oh
have a
yeah.
friend that said, yeah, I get it. Chemo is hard. Yes, chemo brain is a real thing. Yes, these side effects are hard. And really bringing friendships to everyone. And I think with Leah's kids, we really try to live by you are my sister and you're my friend. And knowing
Mhm.
that you are that you are someone to us and we understand what you're going through because you are a friend, you are a sister, and we want to be your big sister on this journey. And so that's why we've done our mental health retreats to where we take girls from all over and we come together for 4 or 5 days. We go to different locations and we have those discussions. We talk about port scars. We talk about taking your wig off in front of your dad. We talk about relationships and friends and boys and how we think and how we feel and infertility and all those big hot topics because that isolation and that loneliness, that feeling that you were just talking about is so prevalent. It's so heavy and burdensome to so many.
Yeah, definitely. And the way you started that, I think is awesome. Just because like not a lot of people know a lot of people that deals with pediatric cancer. Unless like you go through like social media and like start like a nonprofit like yourself to connect with other people. That's really a special thing, just so you can connect with so many other people. Because I know for people that deal with pediatric cancer or so, like a different cancer in general, like it can make people so lonely because they or sometimes often isolated, like you said, due to what form of cancer they have or
Right,
they just really don't have any friends or family at often points and
right,
many other different reasons. And it's literally heartbreaking to even see, even if you haven't like been through that situation.
right. Exactly. You're right.
And to go back to Leah's kids, as you brought it up, like tell us more about that. I know you mentioned a little bit of information before,
Yes.
but what exactly is Leah's kids?
So there was a stage in my life where I really just felt God had me here for a reason, and I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more for the moms in the hospital, the dads in the hospital. And so I went to my parents one day and I said, "How can I do more?" And my dad was like, "Have you ever thought about starting your own nonprofit?" And at that point, I was 17. I was a senior in high school. I didn't know much about the nonprofit world, although I grew up, working with hospitals and American Cancer Society and ACCO. I didn't I didn't know the ins and outs of it like I do now. And so I just was like, yes, let's do it. If I can help people, I just want to take that leap of faith
Mhm.
and leap of courage and move forward with it. And so I did. It was on my 18th birthday because you have to be 18 to have a nonprofit in your name.
Mhm.
And I started Leah's Kids and it started
That's
in
awesome.
secret.
Like, what
I
was
had
like the process like for you? Because I know a lot of people that do nonprofit stuff, and it's so different from everyone else's. But what was that process like for you? Because I
right.
started doing a little bit of nonprofit stuff, but it was so hard for me personally to actually make it a nonprofit for me. So how was that like for you personally, though?
Yeah, exactly. It is very difficult. And I think at a young age, I really just threw myself into asking people questions, Googling, looking things up, finding people. And then, like, the passion was just so heavy on my heart that I was like, I knew this is what I was supposed to do.
Mhm.
And I knew that's where I was called to be. And so I just kind of full strength ahead in it. I just ran with it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this and I want to do it well. And I just started asking everybody I knew questions. I would call people up. I would go visit other nonprofits. I would go to doctors. I would go to other people affected by cancer. I would be, what do you like? What do you need? What do you see? And I just would create. I would just create in my mind, be like,
Mhm.
what else can I create? And that's really where Leah's Kids came from. And so we do financial grants for families. We cover those miscellaneous costs
Mhm.
for families. We do royal encouragement boxes. We do retreats. We do parties for heroes and for families. We have books. We have the first childhood cancer princess. We had a podcast. We speak. We're everywhere. And so, but really, we're boots on the ground to serve families, the
Mhm.
moms, the dads, the grandmas, the uncles, the siblings, because it takes a village to fight pediatric cancer and
It
kids
does,
need
yeah.
people. And so we try to be the people for the kids.
That's great. Like I know for people not a lot of people have friends like as I mentioned before have a community of friends
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that. And it's great that you're literally able to connect with so many people because I know for a lot of people it's okay to have friends with childhood cancer. I feel like they will be your closest friends just because they dealt with that before. And it's much easier to connect with that person compared to maybe most people. I mean, it's okay to have people that don't have cancer or anything
Right,
like that. That's completely fine. But it's like sometimes I feel like the best friendships come out like like the experience they come out of your life.
right. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And so before we wrap this up, so what was the hardest thing about starting this nonprofit and just starting to build off the things in your services?
The hardest thing, I get asked that question a lot, and I think it changes each season of life that Leah's Kids is in.
Hmm.
And I think when I first started, the hardest part was not knowing where to start, but it also was
Hmm.
the easiest part because I knew I could start anywhere I wanted to start.
That was it for me too, actually.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what do I want to do? And really, the decision to start came very natural to me. And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. Which path do I walk down first? And once I kind of laid it all out there, I was like, I don't know. I don't know which one is most beneficial for me to walk down. I don't know. Do I start here? Do I start with branding, logo, website, legally, filing? Like where do you start? Do you gather your board first? Like all those questions that ran through my head, I knew I just had to start.
Yeah,
And
it's
all
just a matter of what specifically do you start
yeah,
on?
and it's a tree. The nonprofit world is a tree, and different branches are going to grow at different seasons. But I
Hmm.
had to get the roots in the foundation. And once I figured that out, I was like, alrighty, let's go. So it wasn't necessarily starting, it was which branch do I want to grow first? And when I found the
Yeah.
branch, it connected to the next one, and they all came together. And I think really honestly that and not knowing people, I grew up in a really small town, so I didn't know, I was 17. I didn't know all these donors. I didn't know all these people in corporations and get
Hmm.
sponsors and I didn't know those people. So it was like, okay, well, I'm just this high school kid. How am I going to go meet those people? And so I backtracked. I was like, okay, that's my end goal. How can I get to that end goal? I backtracked, climbed all over the tree that I was building and figured out a way to get to there. And
Hmm.
so I'd say that was very beneficial.
Like I feel like that's definitely the hardest part, especially if you don't know anyone. Like it's hard for me to actually do it, even if I do have connections or something. Like nonprofit and starting it, it's just hard in general because you don't know where to start. That was the biggest challenge for me when I was starting a nonprofit, or it was actually. Yeah, it was starting to build it up because I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. I admit that. I was like, what am I even doing? And
Yeah.
it's definitely I've like the hard nonprofit stuff that actually I think is actually the hardest. I mean, the things that you do, I feel like it's like the smooth route probably, but the actual nonprofit status in the beginning, I think that's like the hardest part like ever. Like because of the process, it can variety from like a few days to a few weeks. Like it's really a big process that a lot of people don't know about.
Right. Right. But it all comes together.
It all comes together, yeah. So thank you so much, Leah, for coming on and taking the time to chat with us today. I really appreciate you coming on and taking your time to sharing your story. It means so much. I love everything you're doing, and thank you so much again for taking the time with us today. It
Yes,
means so
thank you.
much.
You're so sweet. Keep up the amazing work. You're amazing. And yeah, I'm excited. Thank you.
Of course, same here. And thank you guys so much for coming on and listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, and review, and I'll talk to you guys very soon.